All right. So I'm going to walk through these. Some of these are going to be pretty obvious. Some of these we've already talked about, but just to kind of go over them again. And I am recording this, so in case you want to review it, you can definitely do that. So node graph, how this will be laid out is inside Canvas. So obviously you need to be able to get to Canvas. You'll have the word right there, and then you'll have a list of hotkeys to pick from. So it'll say cut, and then here's the list, and you'll pick from there. It'll say copy, and then here's a list of things to pick from there, okay? So there's no way that you could accidentally put Control-N for cut, right? Because that won't be in that list. It'll just be node graphs list, and then it'll be common nodes list, and then this list, and then that list, all separated items, okay? So it should make it a bit easier. Playing with these over the next couple weeks will definitely make your job a lot easier in understanding what they do. I'm going to just move that there, move this here, scoot that over. I guess that works good enough for what we're doing. All right. So Control C, and then I'm going to make a constant in this case. So if I need to copy something, I could Control X if I want to cut it. Or I can Control C if I want to copy it. And you know the difference between cut and copy, right? Okay. Paste is Control V, so then we can paste that however many times we need to. As we're pasting things, if we have something selected, it'll automatically put it in the chain if it can put it in the chain, okay? So taking a constant with a constant selected and pasting it, it's just going to put it next to it. But let's say that I had a merge here that I cut, and then I click on the constant and paste it, it'll automatically connect that merge into that group because it can do that, okay? So just be aware of how Nuke is going to behave when you do copy and paste stuff. There's also duplicate, which is Alt-C, and that is a copy-paste exact, okay? So it's not like the next one I'm going to show, which is a clone. So if I delete this and I Alt-K this one, this is a clone. And basically what that means is they're connected nodes. If I change one, the other one will change too. Okay, so in some instances you may want that to happen. When we did the tracker stuff up here, these little green lines, those are connecting right to it. So that way that they'll always update, okay? So in that case, that's something that obviously you'd want to happen. And here, for this specific instance, you really wouldn't want this to happen. It's just for those occasions where you're like, hey, I really have these two nodes. I always want them to be the same. So then you can use that Alt-K to do that. So like here's two constants, always going to be the same, right? What else? N is just a rename. So if you need to rename something, you can just hit N and then type in the name of that item there. Sometimes that's easier than sliding your mouse all the way over here or having to double click it and then slide it over there. Okay, because otherwise it's not loaded. So this merge isn't loaded, I have to double click it and then type the name in. Okay, so N is a quick way to do that. Group nodes is Control G. So we haven't talked too much about grouping things yet. So what I'm going to do is if we look at this same setup here. All right, let me make a vignette on this real quick. So I'm going to make a constant. I'm going to merge it into the mix here. And then I'm going to put a roto between them. There we go. And then I'm just going to stretch this out to that. Stretch it out to there. And then I'm just going to invert it. And there is my quick little vignette, okay? Gorgeous. So the idea with this is that these three nodes are always going to come with that vignette. So my constant, my roto, and then let's say this merge. So what I can do is I can grab all three of these and hit Control G to group those. And now I basically have one item that goes into here and then one item that comes out of that. Now the benefit of this is that I can take this group and copy it, go to a new area and paste it, and all of those things will still work. okay? So that whole vignette will still function. So I'm going to paste it. There's the group. And then just to check it out, let's put this on a color bars. Oops. So I'm going to, color bars goes into here. This gets merged. I have to make sure that all my settings are the same as the other one, 1280 by 720. There we go. And now you'll see that we have the vignette right on top of this. Okay, so if I see that there's a section of stuff that I'm constantly using, I can group all that stuff and then populate it somewhere else, okay, or reuse it. Now the group isn't locked. I can always go into the group. So if I control double click, no, that's not it. What do I have to do? Oops. Forgot the hotkey for that one. Too many things. Extract, there we go. Control Shift X. Nope, that's not it. That's not the right one. Branch, expression, preferences, node, group. There we go. So I can go open group, Control Enter, that's what it was. There we go. So this Control Enter allows me to get into the group, and then I can see exactly what the group is doing. So this input 1, that's where that arrow is, okay? So it's automatically saying, here's where this input is coming in, whatever we connect to it. And then that's what I'm going to merge on top of the constant and the roto. So, and then it's going to output whatever it outputs. Okay? So very easily we can kind of set up these little mini plugins that we can use kind of across the board, especially project to project. If everything is the same, we can just copy those groups all over the place. You can also go into that group. Where was it at? And you can expand the group. So if you want to collapse it to a group, that's what we just did. You want to expand it so it's back to normal, you can hit expand. You can copy nodes to a group. You can copy gizmos to a group, which is something completely different. And I've never used a live group, so I don't know what that does. Okay. Shift. Oh, what was that hotkey? Node, group, come on. Expand group, Control G. Thought that's what I hit, apparently not. There we go. Okay, so very easily we can, again, create these kind of like little clusters here. Especially if it's an element that we're constantly using, instead of having this entire mess here, I could just group that into one item, and then boom, it's already locked in. It'd be interesting to see how this works. I guess that still worked, didn't it? Still goes in, awesome. All right, sweet. Okay, so that's how we would see the next one. Control Enter or Control Return. That's what I need. Disable node is D. So if you're trying to see what something would look like without another node on there, that's where you could use that D. So if we go to our end result here, and let's say on the monkey here, I want to see which one this is. So I can click on the monkey and just hit D, and it'll disable that node. That way I can see what does it look like without that node in there. Okay, or I can say what does it look like without the green screen removed, or the pre-mult on, or the transform done, or the match move done. So here we shouldn't see any movement at all because the monkey is just going to stay right where he's at. Yep. And then I hit D again on there and he's re-enabled and moves back in this position. So typically I'll use these for stuff like color corrections if I want to see a before and after. So I can just hit D on that, and it's very easy just to cycle between the two things. I have a grade at the bottom. So I can check out that color correction before and after and see, am I making it look better or worse? All right, so that's that one. Extract node, Control Shift X, that's what I showed before. If I want to pull a node out of this area, Control Shift X, and it just pulls that node out. So if I need to use it for something else, I could do that, or if I don't want it in there anymore, I can just do that. Okay. Swap inputs, we did Shift X, so that's if we needed to swap the A and B here. So we just hit Shift X and it swaps the A and B. That's easy one. Common nodes, let's just scoot that over there. All right, so like I said, we've talked about some of these already. So R is read, so we can then read in a piece of footage. W is write, C is for color correct. G is for grade. B is for blur. Most of these should be pretty easy because it's the first letter of them, so you shouldn't really get those wrong, except for roto obviously is O. And then copy is K, and then transform is T. And the dot is a dot, the period. And remember, we use these dots as ways to help us stay organized, like I did at the very top of this, using all of these dots very easily to keep it nice and straight of where things are going. You can hold control to view the dots and then add them on the fly as you're going, or just delete the dots like so. Okay. If you wanted, this isn't in that thing, if you wanted to hide those arrows, you can go to your preferences. Oops, I guess they put this in an actual thing. Look at that. Expression arrows, Alt-E. So you can just hit Alt-E, and that will hide the expression arrows. And the expressions are basically ways that they're linked together to say that when this item moves, can move these items too. So it's very similar to that cloning right here, except it's sending specific information. It's not cloning stuff, okay? New document, Control N, open document, Control O, Control Save, Save As. Just like everything else, you should have iterations of things. This is not where you're saving your stuff. Some people rename it down there. Don't do that. You should always make sure you rename it right in this area. And typically you want to put an iteration at the end of it. 01, 02, whatever. Exit document, Control Q. Control Z is undo. Control Y is to redo. S is for your project settings. So if I hit S, and I move this over, this is my project settings here. Now if I come up to this area and I hit S, this is my viewer settings. So depending on where my mouse is, that S will do different things. So just know that S down here is project settings. That's what I'm referring to. S up here is viewer settings. I'm not referring to that. Okay? There's only one there, so you shouldn't really get confused with which project settings or whatever. It's settings. Play forward is L. Play backwards is J. There we go. Holy cow, that's going super slow today. Because of the winter. Winter's back. Oh, I have a denoise on there, that's why. So there's L, there's J, and then K is just a stop. You'll notice that J, K, and L are right next to each other on the keyboard, so it makes it easy as a forward, reverse, and stop button right there. Super handy. Single frame forward is right arrow, single frame backwards is left arrow. Again, this is something where you may need to go through and look at stuff frame by frame, especially when you're tracking things. If you remember, I'm going to disable this denoise real quick. When we did the plant here, actually I think I deleted that. Go to that anyway. Let me disable this grade also. And this roto, there we go. All right, so when we did this plant, sometimes you have to go frame by frame and move that. So a quick way to do that is use the arrow keys here to move it a frame and then move it. Arrow keys, move it. Arrow keys, move it, just to make sure it's lined up. Anytime we track, we always want to track contrast. So in this area, it's very easy. There's a lot of contrast right here. If we're trying to make sure that this point stays lined up perfectly, we may want to track, let's say, up here or down there because it's a bit more obvious where our tracker would be versus somewhere in the middle of this. Okay, just keep that in mind as you're tracking stuff. Next keyframe forward, next keyframe backwards. If we have keyframes in here, just as a for instance, I'm going to take this monkey here. And this is where I may want to copy it. Let's say that I have 15 copies of this monkey all over the place. That's the wrong one. Alt-K, there we go. And if I change one monkey, I want to change all the monkeys, right? So I can just Alt-K that one and then merge this into the mix. I actually should not have Alt-K'd that one because that doesn't make sense. I want to Alt-K this stuff and then drop that in there. And then I'm going to go to my transform and then just change where this monkey is. Okay. Oops. So let's just say that this monkey is going to be here. I'm going to go over here and set a key. So you can right-click on anything inside Nuke and set keys on individual items, like that. Or you can click on the graph and set a key on both items at the same time. So you'll see that all of these things have graphs next to them. Some of these will have something like a 2 or a 4 or a whatever. If you click it, it'll break it up into the 2 different numbers. So you'll see there's scale, width, and height. I don't know why it's not X and Y, but whatever. So again, we can go here and set keys on those. And then we can go up a bit, and then let's say move it, and then scale it. Now you'll notice that the other monkey is scaling with it also because I cloned them. So whatever one does, the other one is also doing. So after I'm done, I need to undo all this. All right, so we have this keyframe here and that keyframe there. For whatever reason, we wanted that animation to happen. I'm going to go next keyframe forward, Alt right arrow. Next keyframe back is Alt left arrow. Okay, and the reason for this is that it's not terribly apparent where our keyframes are. I can kind of see a little blue dot right there, but it's not very easy to see. So I want to use that Alt arrows to get right on top of the keyframe if I need to change something. Because if I'm not there, let's say that I just click, let's say randomly here, and then I shrink this down, what's going to happen is he's going to stay big and then shrink down over those couple frames. Okay? Now we can't see it because it's so tiny, but there's like 3 frames or 2 keyframes right on top of each other. All right, put them back there. And then I can delete all of that. First frame is home, last frame is end. Oops. And again, these things matter where you're at. Down here, those don't do anything. Up here, you can see how that changes it. One thing you're going to find about Nuke is the timeline is infuriating. Okay, if I click and drag, look at what time I'm at. I'm at -47. That makes no sense at all. I want to stop right at the beginning of this animation. It doesn't do that. If I hit play, it's going to actually play -47 frames and then play my animation. Okay, now the reason for that is that I may have something ramping up. I may have particles at the beginning that I want to start at frame 0 or whatever, okay? Typically what would happen is, let's say you had an entire movie that you've edited and you wanted to bring that into Nuke, or you want to bring portions of that into Nuke. So at 2 hours into the movie, and this is like a 4-hour movie I'm assuming, there's like 300 frames that we want, okay? So what happens is we take those 2 hours times 30 frames a second. Does anyone know offhand what frame numbers those are? I don't. I'm just just for fun, right? So you have 24 frames in a second times 60, so that's 1 minute, times 60 minutes is that, times 2 because we have 2 hours. Okay, so we have roughly frames 172,800 to 172,300, let's say, okay? So those are our frames. When we come into Nuke, our Nuke timeline will be set up to frames 172,000 to 173,000, whatever that would be, okay, that range. And that makes it obviously odd for us because we're like these crazy frame numbers, but it makes it easier for the editor because they can just say, I know exactly where those go. That's where this spot is in my timeline, okay? Typically, there's shots all over the place. It's not just one shot. There might be 100 shots or 200 shots that they're dealing with per movie, right? So they need to keep track of all that stuff. Now, inside this timeline also are these little red areas. And those red areas are basically like your work area where it's like, this is what I want to work on. So if I hit play right now, it's going to play the entire thing because I haven't told it I want to focus on that work area. So unlike After Effects, which automatically will do that, Nuke does not. Okay, and there's good reasons that it does that. Obviously, you may not want that on. You may just sometimes want it. So right here, I click that. I lied. I clicked the wrong button. Did I? No, where'd it go? There it is. Follow the out point, yes. Lock the playback range to the in-out points, otherwise playback range. Oh, sorry, nope. Yeah, there it goes. All right. So it just a glitch. It wasn't playing. Was it because I was outside? I don't know. Last time I played through, whatever. So that's what would turn it on or turn it off, so we can play the whole thing or just play the one part. Now we could also go over here and set this as to what our time slider actually is reading. So if I go to my color bars and I hit 1, the color bars have no input time. It's a single image. It's one frame. So if I set this from global to input, and I'm viewing it, let me just make sure that this lock range is off. Change that, global, input. Make a liar of me. What are you doing to me? Just put that to 0. All right, so now it wants to play nicely. If I go back to this, there it goes. All right, let's see, now it's doing it again. All right, so this thing will change. Regardless of what you're doing, it will change on you all the time. Your time slider is never ever like locked into the exact spot you want. Right there. So as you're playing in here, sometimes you will accidentally grab this little bar and do that. And now my time slider starts at 163 and then goes to 487. And you hit play and it'll do the same kind of thing where it's ramping up and whatever. So it's always good just to kind of leave it or be aware of that so that you don't accidentally mess it up. You can click the lock here, and that should have locked it already, right? Yeah, it should have. That's what it is. Lock the same frames and viewers, capture the screen. Yeah, it should be good. Yeah. So just be aware of that because sometimes this will you'll accidentally grab stuff and do that. Okay. That's why home and end are really good because it just automatically will take you to there and not take you to negative frames, which is what it's doing now. See? Back to global. There we go. Overlay. So we talked about this the other day. It used to be O is the hotkey for that, but they changed that. Change that real quick. I may not want to see this outline here, or if I'm animating something, let me get rid of the second monkey. Where's my tracker? Right here. I may not want to see all this stuff, so I can just hit Q, and that way I don't see any of that stuff. Okay, I may just want to see what does the result look like. Okay, I want to see that again. And then I can just use Q as my toggle to switch between seeing the tracker, seeing the path, and then seeing nothing at all. Okay, this is also helpful for when you're doing a roto. So here's my roto shape. All right, so there's my roto shape. If I hit Q, it'll turn that off. Q turns it back on. Okay. Sometimes you just want to see what does it look like without it, without having to close all of this stuff here. All right. Enable ROI. So, oops. Oh, Shift W, right. That is this right here, region of interest. And if we are updating something, I can basically set this up to say I only want you to update this area. And that way when I come in here and I'm playing with this one. Okay, so let's say I add a grade node to this, and then I start playing with the coloring on it. Okay, Nuke is only looking in that top window for what to update. It's not updating the entire frame. The entire frame may take forever to update. Here, this is going to happen a lot quicker because none of the stuff is updating except for what's in that frame. As I hit play, you'll see that that's the only thing, again, that's updating with that region of interest. Okay, so that is an incredibly handy thing. Whoops, what is that? Thing to have there. So you can just click that on, click that off. 2D, 3D, these are the things we talked about before with ways that we can get ourselves confused. If we are down here and hit Tab, this brings up a menu where we can type stuff in to see what is, I need a merge node, I forgot the hotkey. I need a grade node, I forgot the hotkey, whatever, okay? Saturation doesn't have a hotkey, so there's saturation. If we're up here and hit tab though, this brings us into our 3D view, right? So tab up here is 3D view, C is the top view, X is the side view, Z is the front view. All of those are listed right here as well, so you can see what all those hotkeys are. And you'll see Shift X, again, something that's used down there is something else. Now up here it's left side. Tab key gets us back to our 2D view. Typically it's going to be tab that you hit. The other ones you typically don't, but just in case, just hit tab and it'll take you back. While we're inside of this area, Alt and right mouse button or left mouse button do this, panning back and forth. Alt and middle mouse button are zooming in and outs. Okay, we should have been playing with that pretty much already. When we're doing our rotoing. Okay, we talked about this before too. Alt clicking the handle in any other program would do breaking the handle because that's just how they work. In Nuke, it's Control, and then you can break that handlebar. Stupid, but whatever. Curve editor. So we haven't played with this yet. Let's say we do have an animation on something. So I'm just going to transform something just real quick. So I'm going to make a roto shape. I'm going to transform it, and then I will merge it into this mix. My roto shape will be this. Gorgeous. And there's my transform. Oops. I wish this would really resize with the rest of it like it should. I'm going to set a keyframe here. I'm going to go up a little bit. I'm going to move it over. Set a keyframe there. It automatically does. Oops. See, I accidentally moved it again. Go here, set another keyframe there, go here, set a keyframe there. Okay, so we have a black ghost kind of running around like that. All right, so this stuff here is related to the animation stuff in the curve editor. So if you've had After Effects or you've had Maya, or I'm sure Premiere and Avid also have an editor for editing keyframes, that's where we would go to the curve editor. And here's those curves. So just like we would have in those, we can tweak how these curves are changing the shape of that. Okay. So if I need to add a point, I can Control Alt left mouse button, and it'll add a new keyframe right inside here. If I need to change it from a, right now it's smooth. If I need to change it to linear, I can hit L. Or if I need that to go back, I can hit Z. Now some of these are going to be more important than others, especially as we start animating stuff inside here. H is horizontal and then X is break. So if I take it like this and I hit H, it makes it horizontal again. And if I hit X, it will break it. So then now I can do one thing with one side and then something else with that side. Okay? So these are the highlight hotkeys. These are not all the hotkeys. Use the hotkeys though as you're working on your stuff because it just makes your life a bit easier to know obviously what these things are doing. It can save loads of time hitting O instead of trying to again search for it over here or typing this and then trying to find roto because you have to use two hands for that. Cool. Any questions on the hotkeys? No? They're pretty much straightforward, right?